This is former FBI Special Agent Robert Hansen, who is currently serving 15 consecutive life sentences in a maximum security prison for selling U.S. secrets to the Soviet Union from 1979 all the way until 2001. Hansen was a specialist for the FBI in counterintelligence, aka his job was to uncover all of the spies. In 1979, he was hurting for cash, so he walked into a Soviet military intelligence cover office and offered to begin trading them secrets for large chunks of cash. In order to prove himself, he gave them all of his credentials and then offered them one starting secret: the identity of the US's most important mole that we had in the Soviet Union, and that was codename Top Hat. But this did not last too long because somehow his wife figured out what he was doing and threatened to leave and turn him in. So he stopped his spy work and then continued working for the FBI, climbing up the ranks. But in 1985, he started hurting for cash again. So he reached back out to his Soviet handler and began trading secrets. Right off the bat, he started off by giving up 3 KGB officers who were secretly working for the FBI, 2 of which were executed. For the next 16 years, Robert Hansen worked for the Soviet Union as a spy while working in the FBI. He gave up every single KGB officer or FBI plant that we had in Russia at the time. He gave up every single technical program on US surveillance platforms in Russia, along with many other things. In the process of doing this, he made over $1 million in cash and diamonds from the KGB. But then, at some point in the 90s, an anonymous Russian source whose codename is Avenger sold KGB files to the FBI for $7 million. And the files that they were given had Hansen's fingerprints all over them. Just 5 weeks before 56-year-old Robert Hansen could retire from the FBI, he was arrested during a dead drop. He was in absolute, utter shock, and all he could say was, quote, "So this is how it ends," end quote.
Jordan Morag, here he is, was 32 when he disappeared from his home in Aberdare in South Wales. Now, his front door was unlocked, his PlayStation was still running, and his mobile phone was on charge. Then, 3 months later, police received a letter. The details of that letter have never been revealed before, until tonight. In a moment, we will, for the first time, see what was in that letter. Who was it from? Does it hold any clues in this case? But first, let's hear from Jordan's mum, Debbie, who is desperately waiting for news more than 3.5 years after last seeing her son.
I can't make sense of it. I really can't, honestly, I can't make no head or tail of it. I don't know what to think. I do always ask that question, why would he do it to me? Why? I had picked Jordan up to take him shopping. I dropped him back off at 4:30, 10 to 5. When I dropped him off, George said, "I'll see you tomorrow." I said, "George, I'm early shift tomorrow and I'm having my hair done." And he said, "I'll still see you tomorrow." And that was it. Jordan enjoyed boxing. He was the world champion for 3 years. He's very quiet. He kept himself to himself, bit of a loner actually. Loved the outdoors, always up the mountain. He'd cook up there. Josh, my other son, he'd said to me, "Had I seen George?" And I said no. Went down there, knocked on the door, rang the bell, tapped the window, no answer. I thought, all right, okay. The next day, no sign of him, so I went back down, done the same, and I tried the door and the door was open. And that's when I found his phone there, the TV on standby. No George. If he was going out, walking or anything, he'd always take his phone. Well, he takes it with him everywhere. And I phoned the police, and I never forget it, because I said, I know it sounds ridiculous, but my son, we can't find him. He was just running everywhere. We were up the mountains, all the family got together, we had searches. We were just out constantly looking. Still. I do this 3 times a week, whenever I can, basically. And when I don't find anything, it's a good day. You've always said to me, what are you doing living there? You should move away. Always said that to me. I think perhaps I have moved on. Just feel empty. Can't sleep, can't eat. He's just a massive part of my life. Always have been. I'm just heartbroken. I'm not coping, really. People say I'm strong. I don't think I'm strong. I keep going until I have answers. Either way.
Developing news tonight on Bryan Kohberger, the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students back in November. Kohberger now being investigated for additional murders in Pennsylvania. Former CIA and FBI agent Tracy Walder saying similar crimes with similar patterns are now being looked into in that area, and having his DNA is a big asset to those investigations.
It's shocking security camera video showing a woman lifting a toddler by one arm to the door. She rings the bell and pounds on the door. Then she turns and runs back to her car, leaving the little boy bewildered. It happened on this street in Houston. When the homeowners opened their door at 8:20 p.m. last night, they discovered the 2-year-old boy. They had no idea who he was. Courtney Fisher is a reporter for KTRK Houston.
And she just leaves the kid, takes off running, and gets the heck out of there. This little kid is left looking around, doesn't know what's going on. Thank God somebody was home at this house to let him in.
The video contained important clues. The woman is carrying a child's backpack in the shape of a monkey. She has very long hair falling past her waist. She has distinctive tattoos on her right arm. She sped away in a white sedan. Reporter Courtney Fisher went door to door asking if anyone recognized the woman or the boy. Watch what happens when she encounters this man.
That's my son.
Willie Simmons is the little boy's father, and it turns out he lives next door to the house where the child was left abandoned.
I'm angry. I'm upset.
He told us his son's name is Royal Prince Simmons. So who's the woman who left little Royal on a doorstep? She's a friend of the boy's mother, and Mom asked her to drop little Royal at his father's house, but she went to the wrong address.
Just imagine if my nice neighbors wasn't there. My son would have wandered in the street and got hit. Just imagine nobody would have been out here. He just would have been walking.
And why did the woman run away, leaving the toddler confused and alone?
Does she not care about this little kid who obviously had no one looking after him at that point? It's tough to watch.
Around 1:52 a.m., a man entered the nightclub, he bought a ticket, and walked back out of the main entrance. At 2:01 a.m., bartenders announced last call. When the man returned through the main entrance of the Pulse nightclub, but now he was armed with a Sig Sauer MCX semi-automatic rifle and a 9mm Glock 17 semi-automatic pistol. He had strapped hundreds of rounds across his chest and ammo belt. He then immediately turned to his right and began shooting with no hesitation. The smell of gun smoke filled the air near the entrance, and at first, even as the loud gunshots were going off, not many people knew what was actually going on. The shots fired were masked by thumping music. An off-duty police officer, Adam Gruler, was working security on the scene immediately and heard gunshots. He approached the main entrance to the nightclub and watched as 2 people burst through the doors. Both were immediately executed by the shooter, who was just inside of them. The officer could see the shooter just barely. He could see the rifle and part of the suspect. So the officer took aim and fired off 4 rounds into the main entrance. His shots ended up missing the shooter and hitting the double doors as they swung shut. The off-duty officer immediately called for backup over his radio.
This is what happened to 20-year-old Vanessa Guillen and how she was found murdered inside the military base of Fort Hood, Texas. Vanessa was born on September 30th, 1999 in Houston, Texas to her parents Rogelio and Gloria Guillen, who are originally from Mexico. Growing up, Vanessa told her mom that she either wanted to become an astronaut and go to the moon, or she wanted to enlist in the military. Gloria was not a fan of this. She actually told Vanessa that she would rather her go to the moon than to ever enroll in the military. However, when Vanessa turned 18 years old, she called her mom and said, "Do you remember what I was going to do when I turned 18? Well, well, I did it. I enrolled in the military. Of course, this was shocking news to the family, but they wanted to be supportive, and when they found out that Vanessa was going to be stationed in Fort Hood, Texas, which was about 3 hours away from Houston, they felt relieved knowing that she was only going to be 3 hours away. Now, while at Fort Hood, she was trained as a 91F small arms and artillery repairer, so kind of like a mechanic. And at first, things seemed to be going well. During this time, Vanessa was actually engaged to a man named Juan Cruz, and they had planned their wedding to be in December of that year. Vanessa was so excited about the wedding, she was so happy to be in the military, but over time, the family started to notice that Vanessa was acting different. She wasn't sleeping, she was losing weight, and something just seemed off. Vanessa told her family that the reason she was so stressed out was because she was being sexually harassed by a sergeant at the base. As soon as Gloria heard this, she told her daughter to immediately report this man, but Vanessa said no. That other girls had already reported him and nothing was done about it. So she figured if she reported him, no one would believe her. She was also scared that if she came forward, there would be some type of retaliation against her. Maybe she would get kicked off the base or something worse would happen. On April 22nd, 2020, Vanessa was actually supposed to have the day off, but that day she received a message from work asking her to come in. She only had a couple of things to do that day, so she thought she was just gonna have like a half day, so she made plans with her friend Tay to go hiking later on. One of the tasks she had that day was to go to the arms room and get a serial number for one of the weapons. Vanessa made her way to the arms room and she texted the armor specialist, Aaron Robinson, letting him know that she was on her way. Around 10:23 in the morning, Vanessa sent a text message to one of her co-workers with the serial number of the weapon. And at around 11:13 a.m., Aaron Robinson closed the arms room. Now the morning continued and Vanessa was supposed to meet up with her friend Tay to go hiking, but she never showed up. Tay started calling Vanessa, sending her text messages, but she didn't answer. Meanwhile, Vanessa's family back in Houston was just as concerned. She hadn't responded to anybody. She hadn't responded to her fiance, to her sisters, to her mom, no one. Vanessa's sisters, Myra and Lupe, decided to call the base and ask for Vanessa. However, that's when the base told them that no one had seen or spoken to Vanessa since lunchtime. The family knew something was wrong, so that's when Myra, one of Vanessa's sisters, and her fiance Juan decided to get in the car and drive to Fort Hood. Meanwhile, back at the base, Vanessa's friend Tay is still looking for her. He went to Vanessa's apartment, but she wasn't there. However, her car was in the parking lot, so where was Vanessa? Okay, more in part 2.
The parents of bank shooter Connor Sturgeon are praising the police for taking down their son before he killed more victims. No words can express our sorrow, anguish, and horror at the unthinkable harm our son Connor inflicted, they say in a statement. We are deeply grateful for the bravery and heroism of the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department. They said their son was struggling with mental health. While Connor, like many of his contemporaries, had mental health challenges which we as a family were actively addressing, there were never any warning signs or indications he was capable of this shocking act, including the shooter's mother, Lisa. You can hear the anguish in her voice.
My son might be because he has a gun and he's heading toward the Old National. I'm so sorry. I'm getting details secondhand. Oh, my Lord. I don't know what to do. I need your help. He's never hurt me once. He's a really good kid. He don't even own guns. I don't know where he would have gotten a gun.
Where did you get this information from? Who told you what's going on?
His roommate called me. I'm shaking. What do I do? Just go there?
No, I don't want you to go to the location, okay? It's dangerous there.
You've had calls from other people, so he's already there.
Breaking news, Jared Drake Bell, Drake from Drake and Josh, has been reported missing. Here is the photo that is being used. The Daytona Beach Police Department tweeted, officers are looking for Jared Bell. He should be traveling in a 2022 gray BMW and his last known location is potentially the area of Mainland High School on 4/12/2023, just before 9 p.m. He is considered missing and endangered.
On January 7, 2006, 21-year-old Sarah Wiley was swimming with 3 friends at Amity Point Beach in southeast Queensland. They were about 15 meters or 50 feet offshore when they spotted this pod of dolphins way further out, and Sarah wanted to see how close she could get to them. So she began to swim towards them until at some point she either got too tired or just decided she was going to turn back. Now, when she did, she got within about 5 meters or some 20 feet of her friends when she was violently pulled under the water. And when she resurfaced in a pool of blood about 5 seconds later, she screamed just one word, shark. And her friends could see, they were watching in absolute horror as she was fighting as hard as she could against 3 bull sharks, One of them had removed her right thigh when it tugged her under the water, and the other two were just circling around. She's punching at them as hard as she can until one grabs onto one of the arms she's punching with and removes it below the elbow. But she doesn't stop fighting. She's punching with the other arm until another shark grabs that arm, also severing it below the elbow. At some point, one of these sharks also grabbed onto her torso and removed a big chunk out of her torso. Now, at the same time, or when Sarah basically started screaming after she yelled shark and while she was fighting, a total stranger on the beach named Josiah Toboyu had heard this. He went sprinting into the water, not wasting any time, leaving his wife and 5 children on the beach, and swam out to her as fast as he could. And when he reached her in this pool of blood, she was almost unconscious. She just uttered 2 words to him: "Help me." And he grabbed onto her and began the slow swim back to the beach. Now he's thinking all this blood is going to bring these sharks right back in, but he says to himself, you know what? I've watched shows, I've read about this. If they come any closer, I'm going to punch them in the nose, in the eyes. I am getting this girl back to shore. He, amazingly, was not the only one to come and help. That pod of dolphins, who had been way far away, way further out, they came in and created a barrier in between Josiah and Sarah and the sharks, despite dolphins being a major prey item of bull sharks. But yeah, they created this wall so the sharks couldn't get any closer. Josiah eventually got her into the beach. They used towels to try and stop the bleeding. Emergency services got there quickly. They rushed her to the hospital, but unfortunately the first hospital did not have what they needed to treat the severity of these wounds. Again, she's missing both of her arms, a chunk out of her torso, and her right thigh. So they life-flighted her to another hospital, but within an hour after the initial attack, sadly, Sarah passed away. She had just lost too much blood. 3 months later, Josiah's wife would give birth to their 6th child, a little girl, and they didn't have to think hard about what to name her. They named their new little girl Sarah in her honor.
Give it to me, please. When love is not the thing that you asked for, I know you have these feelings more than before. So cut that shit and just admit